Hey gang, I did some more testing on H2 steel that I thought you might be interested in. This isn't really comparable to a lot of the other testing that I do. It's just more about this specific steel, but I had some good suggestions in my comments about people's experiences with this steel too. To catch you up, I've done a couple of videos on this steel so far. The first one was a couple of months ago, just a general test, a bit of everything, edge retention testing, saltwater testing, comparing it to LC200N and MagnaCut. And I've always sort of found MagnaCut's something different, but LC200N I've always just found bests this steel, or at least matches it in virtually every common sense metric. So my point has largely been, what's the point of this steel? And people say it's slightly cheaper. It's perhaps slightly more stainless than LC200N. It's a good dive knife steel for making emergency cuts, only a few times, that sort of thing. I get that. But for me as an EDC steel, one of my basic tenets for a good EDC, not to make it sound like a religion, but at my church of EDC, thou must be able to hold a 17 degree per side edge and not have anything weird happen during normal knife use. And that isn't a high bar to meet. AUS 8, HCR 13, that family of steels can do it. 420 HC from Buck at least can do it. So it's not a intolerably high bar, I feel. So this steel I sort of experienced with my 17 degree edge on it during my review period, that it just had sort of several sort of failures, and just it's not for that. That edge isn't for this knife. This knife doesn't do well with the 17 degree edge. So for me, my personal experience and my personal thoughts are that I don't particularly like it for an everyday carry knife steel. The stainlessness to me doesn't matter as much, and if I did want that, I would find my needs met in LC200N, which is similarly priced, and in similar knives even. So those are my initial thoughts. But I had some comments on my previous video suggesting that this does perform quite well with a toothy edge and perform extremely well with a serrated edge. So what I can do for you today is the toothy edge, which is what I'm going to talk about. Serrated edge, I don't own any serrated knives because I put my cereal in before my milk. I take my socks off when I go in the bath, all that good stuff. I'm just kidding. You're definitely not a serial killer if you carry a serrated knife. You're definitely a normal person, normal productive member of society, and don't let anyone else tell you any differently if you carry a fully serrated knife. Satire. Right, so I did a toothy edge 2 times. The first toothy edge I tried to put on was with my new Shapton Rockstar stone. It was a 500 stone. I believe Shapton's grits are a little bit lower than the numbers that are on there, if you're trying to compare them to everyone else's grits. And it did put an edge on that was toothy, but it didn't get as good a result as the next edge that I put on, which was the CBN edge. So what I was going for was an edge that did get a paper slice going, which, for a toothy edge is always a different sensation to like the super clean polished edges I usually do. And then what I was going to do was just cut rope and just see how I felt about it. So I cut rope with my first edge, and it just immediately wasn't. It just felt like it was binding on the rope. It wasn't nice rope cutting. It felt sort of squeaky over the surface of the rope. I was having to push down a lot harder during my. I do about the same kind of cut when I do my rope cutting, and I felt like that sort of cut wasn't working as well. That was with the 500 Shapton and then a quick strop. So I moved on to what I knew would work for doing a guaranteed toothy edge, which was the 400 side of the Spyderco CBN, and then just a quick strop to clean off any burring. And I double checked it under the microscope, made sure it was all apex, make sure the scratch pattern looked good. And that was when I did another revisit to the rope. And this did certainly cut rope really, really nicely with that edge. Combination of probably the hollow grind and perhaps the toothy edge. It did feel really nice going through the rope, and it felt like a really good blade cutting rope. After the first 100 cuts, though, the paper slice stopped. But again, that's different, given that a toothy edge is often going to bind up a bit easier slicing paper. And I only revisit that because it's my normal metric for when I stop a test. But putting that aside, I continued cutting until the knife no longer felt like I wanted to go through the rope. And the knife cut for a good long time. It cut for about 320 times, I believe it was, 320, until it was really sort of starting to squick up, sort of bounce across the surface, need real sort of soaring pressure. Basically when I needed to change my style of cut to get it through rope reliably, that's when I sort of pulled up stumps there. And yeah, for most of those 320 cuts, it was cutting really, really nicely. So that may be a way of looking at this still. If you do insist on having an H2 knife, maybe you just love the yellow scales, maybe you're just a bit like me and you like to collect all the different steels. It might be a decent idea if you have an H2 knife, especially if it is a mariner's knife. It largely is going to be for rope, things like that. Maybe a toothy edge, 400 grit finished, and then either a really smooth stone or a leather strop. That might be the edge that I feel will get you the best performance with a plain edge H2 knife. So just a little update there. Thought you guys might be interested in a little extra, a couple of testing steps I took today. Obviously, my experience may vary to yours. My philosophies and interests about knives and knife steel are going to be different to yours possibly as well. So just take it all in your stride as part of your greater learning experience on Knife YouTube. And I'll see you all in the next film. Goodbye.